The world is getting stranger and stranger, and this generation doesn't know what to believe. And here today to talk with us is a man who has addressed Christian communication to the generation that's coming along right now. And his name is Todd Hampson. Welcome to Prophecy Watchers, Todd.
Thank you so much, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am holding Todd's book, The Non-Prophet's Guide to the End Times, non-Prophet apostrophe S guide. And it's a very comprehensive book, and yet it's what would you call it? Just a little on the light side.
Absolutely. Yeah, I tried to use humor and artwork and make it very visual so that it would draw people in who may not even have an interest in Bible prophecy.
Now, we may get a few pictures up for you to see. I'd like to show you some samples of Todd's cartoon skills. He's really a great cartoonist, and he has put what I would call systematic theology into the form of a cartoon. And this, to me, is marvelous because I'm watching this generation with a little fear and trembling,
Sure.
as I'm sure you are.
Mm-hmm.
We see the screaming girls, we see the marching guys out there with clubs and setting things on fire, and we say, what in the world is happening to society?
Yeah.
This last generation is growing up without much of an anchor. Mm-hmm. And we need to address the idea of Christianity directly to this generation, and I think you've done it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's definitely among all the projects I've ever worked on, this particular book I feel most called to of any project I've ever worked on, and God just really opened up the specific doors for it to become a reality, and that was definitely my goal. Christianity can only be passed on one generation at a time, mm-hmm. so to speak. And Bible prophecy, in my opinion, is like the central nervous system of the Bible, or the backbone of the Bible.
Yeah, the backbone, yeah. It's both of those things.
That's
really.
Right. And, for reasons, and I understand a lot of the reasons, but my generation and below have shied away from Bible prophecy. Some legitimate reasons, some not legitimate, but what we've accidentally done, is throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
And we're missing a full 1/3 of the Bible. And so this book is my attempt at making it accessible to the next generation and really anybody who has an interest in Bible prophecy.
Well, what you've done is marvelous. My first take on this book when I saw it was that you somehow combined what used to be called, 100 years ago, used to be called systematic theology. Mm-hmm. You've combined systematic theology with cartooning.
Yeah.
And in such a lighthearted way and yet a serious way. For example, I've got my thumb in here at page 49
mm-hmm.
on your book, and you have a question. It says, what is the apocalypse? Well, instead of just writing about it, which you do, you also have a little cartoon, little sign
mm-hmm.
to one side. Apocalypsis in Greek, or apocalypse in English, really just means unveiling.
Yeah.
Well, when I saw this, I thought, hooray for you. And I wanted to open with this today because there are a lot of people, and in fact, this generation may use that word without having the slightest idea of what it means.
Right.
And so you define it in context in such a way that it's not repulsive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm bored with this stuff. You kind of pull people along. I like that.
Awesome. That was definitely the intent. And it's easy to sound heady or too intellectual when you start talking about the meanings behind some of the words, or when you say in Greek this word means, a lot of times people just tune right out, but there's so much rich meaning in those words when you study them. And several of those words have kind of made their way into pop culture in movies. And, there's been a movie called Armageddon, and of course, apocalypse. So both of those people mm-hmm. think mean the same thing, just destruction.
Destruction or catastrophe.
Exactly.
9 people out of 10 today. And by the way, they've been raised on a steady diet of video games mm-hmm. and movies, sci-fi stuff, DVDs. that are aimed at familiarizing this generation with the horrors of catastrophe. And so the idea of catastrophe has been confabulated with the idea of the apocalypse, which doesn't mean catastrophe at all. It means the revealing of Jesus.
Right.
It means to reveal. So the word's not being used correctly. And you go through and you talk about a lot of Christian terms. And here's what they really mean, but you don't just say that, you show it in these wonderful little cartoon boxes. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, this, of course, I'm a visual learner, being an artist myself, but millennial generation and below, more than ever, are visual learners. That, they're used to getting information in short sound bites, and, of course, everything's on the phone and stuff, so images are what pull people in. So that's why I thought every key area where there's something either scary, confusing, or misunderstood, I wanted to put some type of artwork or graphic that immediately drew them in, so that even if they didn't read the text, that they were going to walk away with some new knowledge about Bible prophecy and some of the terms.
And you have the little, I don't know what you call them, the little sign boxes, cartoon sign boxes that sort of look entertaining, inoffensive, shall we say, but yet they're packed with information, like fundamental beliefs here on, I'm looking at page 52. Fundamental beliefs for Christians include, and then you have 5 things on your little sign, followed by a quick question. How does one become a Christian? And so fundamental belief number 1, Jesus, Son of God. Number 2, born of a virgin. Number 3, sacrificial blood alone can save you from the penalty of sin. Number 4, he was raised from the dead. Number 5, he's coming back. And you put this so concisely that it sort of hits you, and I like this.
Thank you. Yeah, another thing that's really important to me is unity in the body. Even where there's disagreements, even within the prophecy community, there's different views and people that disagree about various secondary things. So I wanted to highlight for new people coming to prophecy, like, hey, people are going to disagree. Even me, after writing the book, I go back to certain things I studied, and I'm like, hey, my position's changed on that a little bit. So it's a process, but within that process, I wanted to make it clear where we don't divide is on these fundamentals of the faith. There are certain things that are fundamental to what biblical Christianity is. And then there are secondary issues where the Bible doesn't give us all the information, but it's so healthy to wrestle with and study for yourself and talk just like we're doing here.
Yeah, and your little cartoons are instructive. Here's one, the prophet. And by the way, the prophet figure appears right on the cover here.
Yeah.
How did you come up with this guy?
That's a great question. I probably should have started there. He basically, I came up with this idea. I'm an animation producer, so we develop show concepts and little goofy stuff, and had this idea for a nonprofit, and he's called the nonprofit because, number 1, he always tells prophecies after they already happen, and number 2, he makes all these small micro businesses, and none of them ever work. So he's a horrible businessman, never makes a profit, and he's bad at prophecy. So he epitomizes the term "a day late and a dollar short."
The Nonprofit's Guide to the End Times.
Yeah.
That's spelled Prophet, by the way.
Yeah.
He goes to the movies and he says, how long is this movie? And the guy behind, the selling tickets says 2 hours and 15 minutes. And then the nonprofit says, is it really now? Or is that some symbolic, or is it something for something else? In other words, you introduce the idea of symbolism and metaphor with a cartoon. But your text is talking about this idea. Which, and I told you this, the first conversation we had about this book, I said, I can just see this in the hands of this generation. They've been sort of spoon-fed in a symbolic way.
Right.
That is to say, you and I went to school. We read 300-page books in college, and with no pictures. And this generation will not abide that sort of thing. And I think you've sort of aimed it that way, right?
Definitely. And yeah, they've they've been taught, all truth is relative, and they've never really been taught logic and how logic helps us see what truth is, and just really how to think for themselves. And I don't mean to make that as a blanket statement, but as a general principle, that's kind of the way a lot of education and stuff has gone. And with Bible prophecy in particular, or interpreting the Bible, if we can if everything's a symbol and we can make the symbol whatever we want it to be, then it loses its meaning. But if God really means what he says and says what he means, we can trust every word of the Bible. And also, the prophecies in the Old Testament, we see they were all fulfilled literally. So we can't then switch gears and say, oh, well, all the future prophecies, those are just symbolic. Well, no, God's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So the way he communicated to us in the Old Testament and the way he handled prophecy is the same. So we know that the future things that he said are going to happen, we can take those at face value and believe them literally.
Just across the page from the cartoon that I referred to, we have three views of the millennium. Now, I've read these things for years, for decades, let's put it, for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. And yet, when I look at the way you put it, it just pops off the page. Three views of the millennium. Millennialism, post-millennialism, premillennialism in a little sort of cartoon box. Mm-hmm. Then you turn the page and you have drawn cartoons, three cartoons of what these periods actually look like. Yeah. And it's very inviting. And in fact, when I look at it, I'm trying to convey this idea to the audience that ideas that you might find kind of off-putting in some way, or a little boring, whatever, you've kind of added a little charm. And I love it. I think this book has a real place in our 21st century society.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the charts in particular, those of us that have studied Bible prophecy before, we've seen all the big, super complex charts, which are great if we want to, spend time digging into those and going back and referring to Scripture. But for the person who is either never studied Bible prophecy or is new to Bible prophecy, I really believe just really simple, clear charts that explain the concepts go a long way in getting them up to speed and helping them to see, oh, okay, that concept makes sense now. It's not so crazy complex that I can't grasp it,
one of the things that's happening, and I'm sure you're very aware of this, one of the things that's happening today is that a lot of people who really have not been Bible teachers that long, but they're seized by the moment. There's a lot of conversation now about pre-mid, post-trib, and the various aspects of theology having to do with prophecy and so forth, and they've jumped on the bandwagon. And so, as you're very, very well aware of, there are a lot of views out there popping up all at once. And I sort of think that's a sign that we're getting very close to the end. But it's also very confusing to people who want to know.
That's right.
And so, did you approach this book with the idea of just straight Bible study from what perspective?
I hold to, pre-trib perspective that we'll be raptured before the tribulation, and that the literal 1,000-year millennial kingdom follows that. But I present all the views ahead of that, and I really structured the book in a way that it starts very simply and what is Bible prophecy? That's how simple it starts. And then by the time you get to the end, you've gone through the various interpretation methods, all the views. And then I actually have, I didn't plan on doing this initially, but the evidence was so overwhelming, I had to put it in there. I actually have a whole chapter on why I hold to the pre-trib view. And I just have 5 of the main reasons that convince me that it's thoroughly biblical from cover to cover. And then after that is followed by, and you'll probably get into this, but the signs that we're seeing in our day. And then also at the end, in case somebody hung with me that long, if they weren't a Christian, there's actually a chapter at the end that explains the gospel. And then another chapter that tells us as believers how to live today.
And the book makes you smile because it's got that light touch all the way through. It's not heavy-handed, and it's done in kind of nice, bright colors. And with the charts are not boring; they're colored charts and cartoonish, if you will.
Yeah,
I would love to be able to draw a cartoon, and I cannot draw. I mean, if you ask me to draw a cat. I'd draw a circle with a circle on top and 2 little triangles for ears and 2 dots for eyes. That's where I quit right there. That's the end of my cartooning talent.
Well, but if I tried to do what you're doing, I'd mess up just as badly. So we all have our talents, right?
And so you've not only done pictorial stuff, but you've done actual animations.
That's correct. Yeah, I have a company called Timbuktunes, and we produce animation for ministry. We do a lot of work for children's ministries because obviously, it's more for kids, and it's been great doing that over the years. So children's ministry and family-friendly entertainment, that kind of thing, we produce animation for. And yeah, that background just pulls straight into this with the concept development and just the artwork and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, looking here at page 133, the seven churches of Revelation. Now, I'm just picking various areas throughout this book to talk about what Todd does. And what you have done, and really, this is a little over a half a page in this book, and we may give you a peek at it if possible. Page 133, the seven churches of Revelation, takes a little over a half a page, and it's a very pleasant, sort of cartoonish approach, but you actually look at it and you can see the seven churches. Just jumps off the page. Where a lot of other discourses on the seven churches, it takes a long time to figure it all out.
Right.
And that's the beauty of this book.
Yeah, and that's what I tried to do with each concept is take something that was interesting to me that I studied in depth, knowing that the average person isn't going to probably put that much work into it. And then, all right, well, how could I present this visually to where it's engaging, makes them want to know more, but also makes that concept make sense to them. And, the seven churches, Jesus' letters to the seven churches in particular, most people just breeze right over those when they're reading Revelation because they want to get to the action scenes,
True.
But little do they know, there's so much packed into those short letters that Jesus wrote specifically to the churches. And I go through here as well, highlighting that obviously they were to the literal seven churches in Turkey at the time, but also what's fascinating when we look back, and this, I studied this really in depth for this book because I wanted to make sure, it really was my conviction and then it made biblical sense, is that you can see those seven churches throughout church history.
Yes.
And that to me is mind-boggling. And the more I study it, the more I see how true that is and how fascinating that is.
You know what's amazing? Those seven churches are a cycle. That is, they repeat over and over again throughout the church age. You find all seven churches. But they are also linear. They lay out the church age in a line. And so they are both a line and a cycle. Yeah. And it's fascinating. If you look at a map of Asia Minor, the seven churches actually are in a circular form.
I never thought about that.
And
that's
so
fantastic.
Even on a map,
yeah,
it's a circle.
Yeah.
So, and when God puts together a cartoon,
that's right.
He really puts it together.
He does, and his fingerprints are all over it. And what's really unique, and I never thought about the churches being a circle, but now there's a map in there of them, and they definitely are.
Yeah.
What's fascinating is, you and I believe that the tribulation is all about the Jewish people and returning to Israel. Right. The church will be out of here. And Greek versus Jewish thinking, Greek is very linear, whereas Jewish thinking is very cyclical.
Absolutely.
So that's very interesting that you mentioned that, and that's right in Revelation when God's focus goes back from the church to Israel and the Jewish people. Yeah.
Fascinating. Well, his name, Todd Hampson, he's a very gifted writer and a gifted cartoonist and puts those together. When we were talking earlier about the target audience for this, as a pastor teacher, a biblical writer, the audience that I find hardest to reach is that audience of kids becoming teenagers, moving into the late teens, going out to start their own lives.
That's right.
And they separate from their parents, from the family. Sometimes they leave their churches, and they go, and I don't need this anymore. I'm going to go out and make my way in the world. It's that audience that you really want to reach.
Yeah.
And I think you've really gone a long way toward that here.
Thank you.
Is that what you had in mind?
That is, really it was, initially I was thinking millennials and below, but I have a middle schooler myself. I have my oldest son's in college, and I have a daughter in high school, and my youngest is middle school, and he's reading it, and he's getting a lot out of it. So what you said is perfect. And I really had a hard time picking a specific target audience, because really anybody that I've bumped into that has never studied the topic gravitates to it. But middle schoolers in particular, I think would get a lot out of this, and the visual art and stuff like that will definitely pull them in.
It's called The Non-Prophet's Guide to the End Times, PROPHET', by the way. I love your character of the nonprofit prophet. That's a great idea.
Thank you.
So what's your favorite part of the book?
I think my favorite part is really the signs. You know, the first half of the book is all about what is Bible prophecy and basically making a case that we can understand it. And a second purpose to the book is to help people have some answers to the crazy stuff they see going on in the world right now, whether it's in the Middle East or in our country or in our culture. I mean,
Or
just
in
worldwide.
Washington,
Washington. Absolutely. So, and a lot of people, it's the elephant in the room that nobody's talking about. Even in churches, a lot of Christians are seeing these things going on, but they're not really finding answers as to why. And I just want to really awaken people and get people excited that it's very likely that the Lord is coming soon. You know, now more than ever, it seems that he's close.
And the book is divided into 4 parts, and the part 4, where are we now? You start with Israel, the super sign. And by the way, isn't it interesting what's going on in Israel? The transfer of the embassy to Jerusalem, and the riots and the rockets being fired off and the fire kites and who knows what else is going to happen. Every day there's news coming out of Israel. And then you go to a little bit to the north of Israel. You come to, guess where? Syria, which is prominently mentioned in Bible prophecy. And you have Iran, which is old Persia. And it's all just coming right together.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I mean, I shared with you when we met and were first talking that I personally don't have a background. You know, I didn't grow up going to church. The Lord kind of tracked me down, and I was saved at 13. So I'm able to, and I think this is wise. I'm still able to look at Scripture from a perspective of a non-believer or someone who's new to the faith, and seeing what's confusing, what's not confusing. And this is mind blowing to me when I study what Bible prophecy says about what the end times are going to look like, particularly with Russia and Turkey and Iran and Syria and everything coming against Israel right now, which is the size of New Jersey, but the whole world's attention is focused on it. When I look at those things, I can't help but to say, okay, why do the conditions of our day line up exactly like what the Bible says they were going to in the end times? So even myself, sometimes I'm like, Bible prophecy is some wild stuff, but when you look at it objectively, what Scripture says and what we see going on, you can't deny that they mirror one another.
No, it's so fascinating the way you put that, to watch Israel, of course, God's super sign. But you have put it in the book in such a way that you sort of ask a question about the signs. You come to a conclusion, you ask a question about each of the signs that you wish to point out. And I just, again, what I'm trying to convey to you, our audience, is that Todd has this gift of making things really plain, jump off the page plain. So I think that's marvelous.
Good.
By the way, would you like a copy of the Nonprofit's Guide to the End Times? Wait, for a gift of $20, free shipping anywhere in the U.S. Go to prophecywatchers.com, the online bookstore, and it will be there, and you can order it. $20, free shipping in anywhere in the United States. And let me just stress that if you have an early teenager, early to mid-teenager, this is the target audience for this book. It's not boring. It gives you what you want to look for in a quick way, so you don't have to ponder over a lot of hard stuff, which, I deal with kids a lot, and I know about attention spans and things like that.
That's right.
And I'm thinking of a grandchild of my own who would just love this. I'm going to make sure he gets a copy of this.
Let me know what he thinks about it.
I will. Yours for a gift of $20, free shipping anywhere in the United States. And as we do here at Prophecy Watchers, we are putting together a package that features the Nonprofit's Guide to the End Times. We're calling it the End Times Prophecy Package. And you can purchase a lifetime subscription to the Prophecy Watcher magazine, and we'll give you free a copy of the Nonprofit's Guide to the End Times as part of that package. For your gift of $100, you get the magazine for life. And by the way, this offer is not going to last much longer, so take advantage of it. Your gift of $100, free shipping in the United States. The offer time is limited. Go to prophecywatchers.com, the online bookstore, and you'll see this offer. And by the way, you'll see the book. We've got 2-3 minutes left here. Todd, what's your target now? Where's the Lord taking you with this as a basis? What has this done for your life?
You know, I think one thing I'm really praying through now is how I can get this book to more people, and even, churches that maybe don't even teach Bible prophecy,
right?
Use this as a tool to introduce it to.
Interesting point. I hate to interrupt you, but I didn't want to let that slip by because there are a lot of churches that absolutely avoid Bible prophecy because, well, they have several reasons. It's too controversial. It's too complicated.
Yeah.
It's confusing, et cetera. You can go out, there are a dozen reasons.
Absolutely, and that's a unique perspective I think I have with my background is that I understand the reservations. I really do understand. If you Google Bible prophecy, you'll have to wade through 60 sites of some really weird stuff before you really find some good biblical insight. And I think that's the plan of the enemy is to systematically get people's eyes off of Bible prophecy because of the importance of knowing Bible prophecy and seeing the times that we're living in. So really my goal is to not bash any churches, but to really just help churches. Use my unique background in this book to help teach Bible prophecy in a unique way that is very relevant to our lives today.
What's happening today? Well, let's just take a look. You have Israel, the super sign. Israel is becoming stronger every day and more biblical in outlook and appearance. What about Europe? Good old stable Europe, European common market. Not anymore.
That's right.
Destabilizing. What about the good old USA, where you can always depend on everything being solid, nobody has a problematic outlook at all, and we all get along because we're all believers in God, and we go to church on Sunday, and that's the United States, right? Wrong. It's
not anymore.
It's all changing, and you're addressing, I think, that change, and with this book, which again, it's a timely offering. Are you afraid? Do you take a look on occasion at certain things that are happening that are coming into your house on various video channels, and you're saying, "What am I going to do? It's all falling apart." Have you sensed that?
Yeah, and actually, that's a good point. That's the difference studying Bible prophecy makes is that looking at the world without the insight of Bible prophecy, everyone gets fearful.
Yes.
And that's also why people don't study Bible prophecy, because they think it's going to make them more fearful. But actually the opposite is true. If you study it in a thoroughly biblical way, it actually gives you hope, purpose, and joy, knowing that everything that God promised is about to come to pass. He's a promise keeper. He's not going to let us down. He's with us individually, and he's with us as the church.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Todd Hampson, writer, illustrator, student of Bible prophecy. Thanks for coming by. We really enjoyed the conversation.
I did as well. Thank you so much.
I'm Gary Stearman. Hey, you keep watching. We are. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.